super excited to be here today, participating and talking with you all. So it's kind of a long spiel, so James, you got to keep me on time. You can keep me on task and time, but I am happy to answer some questions as we go along. It doesn't really throw me off, but let's jump right into it. So the picture you see in front of you is probably one of the most famous pictures of freedom of speech and the right for the public to talk and to voice their concerns. And just to give you some background, this is from 1942. It's Norman Rockwell. It was in the Saturday Evening Post when we had newspapers like that. And this was one of four freedoms of speech, one of four freedoms that FDR talked about in his fireside chats on the radio. But this is actually based on a true story. This gentleman, Mr. Egerton, was in a town hall meeting, and the issue was about a school. The school burned down, and the community knew that it needed to rebuild the school, as did Mr. Egerton. But he was a farmer, and his family farm had suffered a major disaster of plague, or whatever you call it. And as a result, he did not have the money. And so his big concern here is, how are we going to pay for this? So true story, this was in Vermont. And the only thing I want to mention is the original photo, the original painting is on the right. And at the very end, they decided that it was just too distracting with all the different faces in the background, so they went with the one that we all know today. So my next slide, I'm going to say, usually when we talk about there's a saying that, you know, the names have been changed to protect the innocent, right? But we're going to jump right into our friends down the road in Colleton County. And this is not to pick on Colleton County. This is not the fault of the economic developer or the local officials. But if you haven't seen this video, it's a pretty powerful reminder of what is going on, not just in South Carolina, but across the country as we talk about NIMBYism and we talk about the cavers and the bananas and the real challenge that exists to get major projects done. So hopefully this works.
We're not out here running roughshod trying to develop the area. It's in an RD zone. However, this project is a project type that fits in an RD zone. We don't. Hold on.
You're out to lunch, Steve.
Mr. Sir, I'm here.
You're up here just giving a bunch of politics.
If you don't want to hear what I got to
I
say,
don't give a you want to say what you get out of it. Your first project, get out of it.
I came here out of respect to tell you county council's position.
Well, I don't county council. I don't trust you.
Well, and that's fine if you don't. But I don't make those rules what fits
Yeah,
your definition.
yes, y'all do make the rules, Steve. Y'all sit there and make rules. I told you, Gene, and talk about. I know what I'm doing.
With all due respect, hold on for 1 minute.
The gentleman on the left is a member of county council, and this is sort of a public hearing. It's not an official public hearing. It's more like a informational session, let's say. And he's at the front, and he's explaining we've got this data center coming, and he's trying to explain all of the different elements of it, and he's trying to give the factual background. And the gentleman on the right is let's call him a concerned citizen. I think he's a landowner. He may live nearby or have land that's adjacent. And again, this is becoming very, very common across the country, and it's becoming a real issue that we need to be aware of. So here's what I'm going to talk about today: caves, bananas, NIMBYs, why it's worse than ever. I'm going to talk about this really interesting thing called the many faces of NIMBYism, and I borrowed it from somebody else, and I'll talk about that in a second. The under the radar fallacy. Let's just keep this under the radar, and it's going to be fine. It'll just get through, right? And you'll see when we get there, but I've been doing economic development for a long time, and so I know the rules. You all know the rules, but the rules have got to change as we are facing more and more pushback from local communities. I'm going to talk about some strategies. I'm going to touch on them. I've got some slides that you can take pictures, no problem. But we've only got 45 minutes, so I can't go through all the solutions. But public outreach, how to do that in advance, different than what we're used to doing, how to work with local media, public hearings, final thoughts, and then, like I mentioned before, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. All right, so if you don't know what NIMBYism is, that's the definition. That's what AI said. but it's not in my backyard. So, and because the whole purpose of the presentation is on NIMBYism, I want to make sure that everybody knows what the hell I'm talking about. Here are bananas, if you haven't heard this term. It's build absolutely nothing anywhere near anyone. So these folks tend to really not want certain things near them, but they are willing to suggest other areas. Sometimes it's tough because by the time it's gotten to them and they're upset about things, it's probably too late by then. The next group is caves. Those are citizens against virtually everything. Zero hope of saving them. You're never going to get to them, even if you start early. It's too late, and they don't want anything. They like the town exactly like it is and don't want to see anything change. So, what's the cause of NIMBYism, and why has it gotten worse? The fear of change is ultra powerful, right? And people are afraid of the unknown, so they don't know what it's going to look like. And as a result of COVID and us being at home and having plenty of free time, I'm going to come downstairs, by the way, having plenty of free time, and with the understanding that if you get on the internet, you get on Facebook, you can change things. You can definitely have a voice, and that voice is amplified almost for free. And so people are basically like, no, if I don't want this, I'm going to do everything I can to stop it. I'm going to throw spaghetti at the wall, whatever the argument is. It may be a different argument in the next project, totally inconsistent with the argument I just made. Doesn't matter. But also a lot of it's a lack of understanding and misinformation. So again, Facebook, Nextdoor, it's sort of driving the conversations, so we have to be aware of that. I mentioned COVID. I mentioned how inexpensive it is. Here's another issue that we're seeing is that local officials, economic developers say, nah, we're good. We've been very successful. We don't need the controversy. We'll always be successful. We don't need to worry about these issues. Let's just pass on this project, or let's not give it its due, because there are plenty more down the line. But the reality is that even if you're successful, economic development, it doesn't take place in a day or a year or a couple days. It's a long game. And so you're successful this year, you need to be planning on what life is going to look like 10 years from now, because that's your role as an economic developer. Here's another issue of why it's worse than ever. Like, people say there are no good sites anymore. It's because we've gotten a lot of those good sites, and we're still struggling to come up with newer sites. And when you're looking for newer sites, they tend to not be as isolated. They tend to not be in industrial parks. They're closer to neighbors. They're closer to other uses. And so that's stirring up controversy. And of course, there's a lot of negative energy for renewable energy projects, for EV projects that didn't come to fruition. And again, I'm not talking or picking on South Carolina. This is happening across the country. The other thing is that because of Facebook, because of the internet, everybody is an expert, right? Everybody out there knows more about the projects than you do, and they've done their research, Googling, using AI to summarize, of course, the things that are out there. And as a result, I have been called a liar many, many times. And I have seen where public officials have been called liars, or companies have been called liars. You're just saying that now because you want this approval, but you're going to change your mind, or whatever you're saying is not true. You're just trying to placate us right here and now. And it's really becoming very, very toxic. And that goes also to the lack of institutional faith, where people feel like they can't trust the politicians. The politicians are not looking out for them, not doing what's best. And it's just breeding this situation where you really can't win, and it's tough. More tough than it's ever been. And finally, if you're in a community that's had a lot of controversial projects before, then it makes it even tougher, especially if that company didn't live up to its promises, or that project did not bring the benefits that you or your community said that they were going to do. And so the public is kind of pissed about it. So the faces of NIMBYism. So as I go through these, I want you to think about people that you've come across in public sessions or in your daily conversations in economic development, try to visualize some of these folks. So I said I borrowed this from a guy. The guy's a former mayor in Florida, and he writes books on NIMBYism, and he's pretty interesting, pretty funny. But the first one I want to mention is, and by the way, this is from his book in 2025. The first one I want to mention is the guardian, right? It's the homeowner. And it's typically somebody who's very worried about traffic or the value of their property being diminished because it's nearby. They typically are the largest in volume source of our headaches, right? They're the ones that are getting a large group together to come to the public hearings to all voice opposition, again, because they're afraid, because they don't know or they're misinformed. They love the status quo. I moved to this town because it was X, and now you're trying to change it to make it Y. I like it like it is. Don't touch it, right? They're not thinking about the fact that if you're not growing or you're not moving forward, then you're kind of dying or you're losing ground. These people live on Facebook, live on Nextdoor. And they've got little ticklers that are always telling them all of the things that are going on, so they know the latest gossip that's out there, the latest misinformation's out there. Typically, they are first-time participants in a public hearing, right? They've never done it, they don't know what it's about, and so they're quick to be loud, they're quick to boo, they're quick to clap for the whatever the opposition that they've joined is saying. So, do you guys know any of these folks? Okay, good, all right. So, the Crusader, this is a professional activist. So this is somebody who is part of a group, maybe a historical society, or maybe a riverkeeper, or I'm not picking on those folks. I'm just saying this is somebody who, by being vocal, it also drives content to their website, or it gets them more money because they're able to raise funds, or it gets them more membership to their organization. So they feel like they are the savior of this piece of the world that they're in, and they're going to stop at nothing to move forward. Anybody know a Crusader or the Crusaders? Yeah. Okay, this guy, this is Niccolò di Bernardo di Machiavelli. He died 500 years ago next year. And he is considered the father of modern political science, modern politics. He wrote a book, and that book is often used by people to figure out how to manipulate politicians, how to manipulate the public sphere. This guy is the person in the audience who is running for office, right? It's a guy who's preying on the movement and the issues to sort of launch themselves into becoming the next mayor or the next county council member. Or it's somebody on county council that wants to run for Congress or wants to run for Senate or wants to run for higher office, and they're using the vibes out there to manipulate so that they can gain political push. Does anybody know these people? Yeah, okay, exactly. The watchdog. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more detail later. The watchdog is the local reporter, and unfortunately there are fewer and fewer of these, but they're driven by a couple of things. If it bleeds, it leads. I don't know if you've heard that story, but that's what sells newspapers, that's what sells clicks, that's what sells eyes, or that's what brings eyes to their website so they can sell advertisements or they can sell subscriptions. They like the David versus Goliath story. It exists. It exists, and it's easy to write, right? And these are real people too, and I'll get to that in a second. The newspaper people are real people, and I'll talk about how to better interact with them in just a second. But they're often approached first by the opposition, and so they get the full lowdown of misinformation from the opposition, and so they've already got it in their brain that they're used to the David and Goliath story. People like that. If it bleeds, it leads, and they're already set because of human bias to start writing articles that are negative. Last one is the Godfather. This is the proven person. This is the person who has been very successful in stopping other projects. And so now they're being called on to lead the effort to stop yet another project. It's like the homeowners association person who always comes to talk about how bad this project is for their community. but this is the Godfather. And the key to the Godfather, you still kind of have to kiss the ring. You don't have to do it like on bended knee, but you have to get in front of these folks early to have conversations, to give them the full story, okay? And remember, I said get there early, because that's what we're going to talk about, the fallacy of under the radar. So we're all used to confidential projects. We're used to code names, but that really breeds mistrust in the public, right? I'm used to that as well. But we've got to rethink how we go about doing economic development for these major projects that could be controversial. Have you heard this from your politicians? Let's not create controversy. Let's keep it quiet. It'll go through. It won't be an issue. We can get this done. But the thing is, if it's big and controversial, or will be, it doesn't just slide through. It doesn't just get done. So you've got to be able to arm your politicians with that as well and say, hey, we really need to rethink how we're going to do this project because it's going to be controversial. So we need to reshape our attack plan on getting it approved. One of the things I also want to mention is the economic developer is the leader in a way, and I'll get to this in more, but that doesn't mean the economic developer is the gatekeeper. I'm going to give you a quick story. We worked on a major project in Virginia, and I met countless times with the company, with the county administrator, with the economic developer, and they said everything was going fine, council would vote for it. Well, council was pissed that they had never been talked to and never really been explained about the project, never had an opportunity to ask questions, and they were very angry, and it did not go well when we got to public hearing. Did not go well at all. So economic developers, you've got to make sure that all of your ducks are in a row with local politicians, because they're the ones that really vote. They're the ones that have their elected status on the line. Last thing I want to mention about this is the NDAs. So it's important to do NDAs, especially for trade secrets, especially very early in the project, but that more and more information needs to get out, and you can't hide behind the NDA as you get to when it's time to be in the public sphere. Because again, that will breed concern, that will breed skepticism. Oh, you're just hiding behind this document from the company. Any questions so far? Okay, so here's the challenge of this new thought process. And it's a challenge because we as economic developers are always trying to sell. We're trying to talk about why our community is great, everything's going to work out fine, you should have no worry, it's going to be a great place, come to us. But is that really helping? And the answer is it's not, okay? Because it's a huge waste of everybody's time, everybody's energy, if it's going to be controversial and you didn't say anything, right? And the worst outcome for a project like this, or a project that goes awry, is that it leaves a bad mark on the community, right? Site selectors, there's some in the audience here, they say, is it worth trying something new in this community? Because they say no to everything, or they're vocally in opposition of what's going on. And so it can be really, really problematic. So the best approach is not the hard sell, it's the help. How can we help you? Here are the issues, here are the people you need to talk to, here's how we can assist to get things done. You need to have two plans moving forward. The normal economic development plan, the 10-year horizon. We're going to work on this industrial site. We're going to work on that one. We want to recruit automotive. We want to recruit life sciences, whatever it may be. That's a normal plan. But you also have to have a NIMBY plan. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But it's basically understanding all of the potential hiccups that a project can hit. And it's usually the same people over and over again, or the same groups that are controversial or that have pushback. And so it's good to have a file, not like the FBI, not like Hoover, not Hoover, but the leader of the FBI keeping track on everybody in their personal lives, but a file ready so that you can provide data to the companies. Because this is not only on the economic developer to solve, it's on the companies as well. The last thing that's helpful is to be very upfront with your elected officials, share with them how many touches the company has done with community, how many doors they've knocked on, how many meetings they've had, how many letters to the editor you've seen, because they need to be kept abreast of what you are doing, what the company is doing to reach out to the community and try to touch the community and try to let them know about the project. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. Turn me on real quick. So one of the things that... Am I on? There. Yeah. One of the things that, for those of you who don't know, I'm a recovering local economic developer. It's a very long recovery program, but one of the lessons, and painful lessons that I learned, that if I was not informing every single county official, city official, whoever was approving the vote we were asking for, then I hadn't done my job, and I run the risk of whatever we're presenting not getting passed. So sitting down with them in their home, a lot of times for me, we had 21 county commissioners in Tennessee, sitting down with them in their home, in their place of business, on their turf, and telling them every single thing you know about the project that you can tell them. Also knowing that if there's information, too much information that you give them, they're going to talk. And I don't know if you're going to get to that about people talking. They have a genetic predisposition to tell people that they know, to let other people know they know. You guys have them in your own backyards. But count your votes. If you don't have the votes, pull it. Either pull it all together or pull it and get your ducks in a row. But that's one of the most painful lessons I had to learn as an economic developer. But once I learned it, I never stopped doing it. Every single vote, no matter how big, how small, sit down with all of them, make sure they all have the same information.
Thanks. All right, so let's talk about some strategies that are not typical to economic development, that we're not used to doing. And maybe some of you have employed some of these. But one is polling, right? And I know that sounds odd, but just like a political campaign, just like a controversial referendum that's out there, it's important to know what the real sentiment of the community is. Now, this is expensive. You're talking at least $50,000, maybe $100,000, depending on how much polling you're doing and how often you're doing. But guess what? The company should pay for that, right? So again, this is a change of what we're used to doing, where the economic developer sort of absorbs it all, the community absorbs it all. No, if it's going to be a controversial project, then the company needs to shell out the cash to be willing to do this. And guess what? They are willing to do that. They are willing to step up because they've spent a lot of time researching your site, and they recognize that it may be a good fit for them, but they've got to do all the steps that are important to move this thing forward. So polling is really, really important. So once you have the polling, you can say, hey, really, it's not as controversial as you think. It's a small portion of the community that doesn't like it. But you can also craft narratives about the project based on the data you're seeing, right? And that polling data can be shared with the local politicians so that they can answer questions when they get asked about it outside of the NDA, right? They can say, yeah, we know it's going to use X number of megawatts of power, not a gigawatt, or it's going to only use 100,000 gallons of water versus 2 million gallons of water, which you're seeing. So it gives them the ammunition to be able to respond to the public, because they're going to get public inquiries. They're going to get text messages, and they're going to get stopped at the grocery store, and so that's really helpful. The other important thing, and it doesn't always, it's not the end-all be-all, is to explain the tax benefits, right? Explain, this project could come here, and it will create so much revenue for the community, or it could be 1,000 homes. And 1,000 homes don't generate a ton of money for the community. In fact, they're almost a burden on the community, and everybody likes building homes, but it creates real issues in terms of being able to meet budgets. Or it could be a distribution center, or it could continue to be just a farm that generates a couple $100 in taxes every year. So arm them with that. It's super helpful. So polling is a great way to really understand the community and, again, give politicians what they need to know to respond to questions. Let's talk a little bit about public outreach. So yes, Facebook, I won't say it's evil, but it definitely is used for evil purposes, right? So that means that you need to be on Facebook, and again, I don't mean you, the company needs to be on Facebook early on in the process. They need to have a page that talks about sorry, I don't know why it's doing one by onesies. Let's go ahead down. They need to have a page up there that has all of the things that are actually happening, a page that people can find on their own or go to whereby they can read what the actual project is all about. I know we're not used to that because this has got to happen before it gets controversial. This has got to happen before we're in a public hearing. Once we're in a public hearing and people are pissed, it's almost too late because then it's, the ship has left the harbor, let's say. But you can on your website, and I think this is really important, the Facebook page, say, if you're being a jerk or if you're just trying to create controversy, we reserve the right to remove your comments. So let them know that it's not a place to vent, it's a place to ask questions and get real answers. The other thing is a website. So a company, even a developer that's coming in, yes?
How do you balance that between getting the approval that James talked about?
Sorry, how do you balance having a Facebook page?
With what James talked about in terms of getting the approval of leadership first.
Yeah, so that's a great question in terms of timing. So all of this has to, sorry. Sorry, the question was how do you balance getting this information out in the public with making sure that your politicians are A, well abreast of the project, and B, are on board. It is a strategy, and there's no quick answer. But it's reading the politicians in early and letting them know also that you've got this strategy for reaching out to the public so that everybody's on the same page. You're not getting them to opine on every piece of the strategy, but you're letting them know what's coming out so they can be prepared as well. You definitely want to let them know before this goes live because, again, they're going to get lots and lots of questions. Website. I have worked with a couple developers that have projects or they're trying to recruit projects, and their websites are awful. Awful. They don't say anything. And so when a company's or a community member's trying to find out information about the project or about the website, they're like, can these guys even deliver? Their page is terrible. I can't find the information I'm looking for. So it's important, again, like the Facebook page, it's important to have a website that answers common misconceptions, common questions, and it looks really professional. Because again, I mentioned that lack of institutional belief, the belief that everybody is lying to you, and that nothing anybody tells you, nothing the experts say is real. A website can really, really hurt you if it's bad. So again, you're preparing the company that these are the things that they need to be doing. I don't know why it's doing this. Sorry. Oh, don't look at that picture yet. So this goes back to what I mentioned about polling. We do polling in the political sphere all the time. I know you read about it. But public outreach is also important. Have you heard the term GOTV, get out the vote? That's what basically all the parties do right before elections to encourage people to come out. You kind of have to do something similar if you want this project to move forward. And you have to do it, obviously, earlier on than you're used to doing, that we're used to doing. It's door knocking, right? Especially around those neighborhoods that will be potentially impacted. And it's sitting down with people. This takes a lot of time and a lot of energy. But again, if a company wants to get it done, they can do it. It's sitting down, listening, and maybe it is making some changes to a site plan. Maybe it is putting up a berm. Maybe it is shifting where some of the buildings may be to really not diminish the quality of life of that next door neighbor. Texting campaigns. It's key to think about this in a different way than we're used to doing. Again, under cloak, under dagger. Okay, I don't know if you all know who this is. If you're under 25, you probably don't. I mean, that's me a long time ago. It's me in college. The guy there is a former mayor of Cincinnati. Does anybody know who he is? Former mayor? Okay, Jerry Springer, great. I don't know if you know why he didn't run for office again, and I'll mention this. Maybe you do. He wrote a check to a prostitute. Yeah, wrote a check to a prostitute. But anyway, so Jerry Springer was famous. Again, if you're younger, he was famous because he had a television show called The Jerry Springer Show that was all about controversy and whose father was the father, or who was related to who, and had these fights in the middle of the show, had security come out. And so we don't want that at our meetings. That's the point here. But I will tell you, Jerry Springer, I went to Tulane when I was a student, or not when I was a student, but while I was a student, I had him come and be our homecoming ambassador. So that's why I'm in a picture with Jerry Springer. So because these things can get really controversial quick, everybody says, all right, well, we need to have a meeting with the community. We need to let them know what's going on because they have lots of questions. But listen, town hall meetings are the worst format to get your message out. One microphone at the front, everybody sitting out here like this, awful. Good Lord, don't do it. Don't do it, okay? There are better ways to get your message out there that work. And I'm going to give you one example. Sorry. Community information sessions. You can call it something else, but it looks more like a science fair, right? So let's take a data center, for example, or data center project. I say data, not data, by the way. Data center project, people worry about water, they're worried about noise, they're worried about, I don't know, traffic, they're worried about, oh, there are only 3 jobs, oh, it's going to suck down all our power, whatever it may be. So picture a science fair, you've got a booth or a table with somebody at that table who knows all about power. And you've got another booth or another table over there, and that person knows all about water and can answer questions. And you've got one more over there, and that's somebody who's talking about the site plan. And so when a community comes in or community members come in, they can't hog a mic. They can't grandstand and talk about what a terrible thing this is. You're killing our neighbors. This will be awful. It's ruining our quality of life. They can talk to that person there. They can get feedback there, and it's not infecting the rest of the conversation. Very powerful. Also, it's important to have food. Free food is really important. No alcohol, by the way. Absolutely no alcohol. Actually, it was John Cadena mentioned to me when I gave a similar talk. He's like, you know what? We at Dominion, what's wrong? Sorry, just listen up. Shh. He said, traditionally, they've done their town halls when there were projects were controversial in churches. And the rationale behind the church is you're not going to behave poorly in churches. Not bad logic, but then he sent me a video the other day which has people yelling in a church. So I don't know if that's going to work either. But nonetheless, open houses and science fairs. Yes? Yeah, I got you. I'm sharing.
Look at me, I'm shaking.
Oh my God, stop.
I'm kidding. We love our utility partner friends. So, is Cole Price here?
Where is Cole? Oh, Lord.
He's at the county meeting across the street with Leslie.
Okay. Then I want to share the story real quick. And this comes, Craig, you from York Electric, you were at the QTS town hall. There were a lot of people there that were very angry. And Cole took the time, he represented the utility table, but he took the time to sit and just let people talk. Share their concerns, try to answer with facts. But at the end of the day, he said the lesson for him was people just want to be heard. Right? A lot of times the people that are against something, 9 times out of 10, they just want to be heard. And if you make them feel heard, sincerely make them feel heard, that takes away a lot of the battles. Anyway, I wanted Cole to share that, but.
We'll have a follow-up session with Cole later. Yeah. That's a great point. And that's sort of what I meant back to knocking on doors, especially those neighbors, making sure that they feel like they're being heard. And if you can make adjustments to the plan that make sense, then make adjustments to the plan. Listen, the lunch and learns are really helpful as well. Talk with business leaders. Talk with people that are, when I'm saying, I'm not just saying the economic developer, by the way, I'm talking about the company. Making sure that there's a face with what's trying to be accomplished here and let them hear and ask questions so they can then disseminate that information to the people that they know. Super helpful. Seems kind of logical, but again, it's part of an overall strategic plan to making sure that we're doing as much as we possibly can to inform the community. And going back early, I mentioned the Godfathers. It is important to get in front of the Godfathers and the guardians as soon as possible and not wait till it's all stirred up, not wait till the public hearing where there's going to be a vote, because they will come out in numbers if they're misinformed or not informed. I mentioned, I was going to talk a little bit about this. Let me go ahead and jump down through these slides. So I mentioned before, reporters are real people, and the thing is they have deadlines, right? Like that is the way that the world works. They have deadlines. So it's important to reach out to them early in the process. If you're a developer, if you're an economic developer, if you're the company, it's important to call them and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. We're happy to answer any questions you have. Here's my cell phone if you have follow-up questions. Here's a quote from us that you have it. Please feel free to call me if something comes up or if someone has said something and we want to dispute it. Now, you can say, hey, well, I'd like to see it before it goes out, but that's probably not going to happen. But you can have an understanding of when it will go out as well. And you're not doing this in a vacuum, right? You're talking with a company or you're talking with the economic development team. You're letting your politicians know that you're talking to this newspaper reporter, and he or she that article is going to come out on X day. Again, it's a strategic plan.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
We were going to kind of Mutt and Jeff this thing. So, local economic developers. We had a standing monthly meeting with our business beat reporter at the Leaf Chronicle in Tennessee. So every month we had a meeting to sit down and talk about projects, what we could tell them, what we couldn't tell them off the record. But he was a real champion for economic development. We turned him into a champion for economic development. The other thing is, don't discount your local radio. We had a long-running show called Monday Mornings with the EDC. Maybe you heard of it.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, I still listen to it.
Yeah, what shocked me is that people actually listen to that thing. This is AM radio in Clarksville, Tennessee. That could be at 102.9 rock station in Nashville, but they had listeners, and it was a pain in the butt. And sometimes I'd have to do the show from the road. But every Monday morning, 9 o'clock, we had a 45-minute segment where the local guy could just ask questions about what's going on with economic development. Hey, we're hearing this rumor about such and such company. What can you tell me? But it was a tremendous amount of effort, but amazingly worthwhile.
Remember that inherent bias I mentioned, David Goliath? If you talk earlier, then then they have someone else they can refer to, and it's not just the big bad story against the developer. And this is the only other thing I want to mention about journalism. I've got a huge history in journalism. From the 9th grade to the 12th grade, I worked for my local high school newspaper. So that's my background. But really, all journalists will tell you the inverted pyramid, the who, what, where, and why. The most important details of a story are at the beginning. And then it slowly diminishes in importance, right? And the rationale behind that was because you used to have to actually print the newspaper and had to stick into a specific spot before you sent it to the printer. But this is important because if you wait till the end, when the story is being written and it's negative, they may add a little quote from you about, hey, we think this is a really important project, or may add a quote from the developer or the company, but it may just be on the cutting room floor because it was too long to fit or it wasn't as interesting. Other ideas with traditional media, James mentioned radio. I had a little point about that earlier, but I'm just trying to condense it down. Traditional radio, also buy ads, again, not you, but the company, buying ads on Instagram, buying ads on YouTube, not stuff we're used to doing. But welcome to the new world where we have to do these things. Letters to the editor sometimes work, sometimes they're not great. Doing a guest column, it's really, again, those touches to let the community know what is going on, really important. Okay, so here's a little note on public hearings. And this is an actual public hearing conversation, not just a town hall, don't do it, but a science fair type meeting. This really is for the elected officials, you to go back to your elected officials. They have got to set the ground rules up front. And they need to be consistent with the way they typically run public hearings. But if they typically run them poorly, then they need to have a change on how they're doing it. And they need to explain that to the public. And they need to say, you've got 3 minutes to talk. Everybody gets 3 minutes, and that's the max. In some cases, you can limit it to just to residents. Some states allow that. Some communities do that. But if not, at the very least, the person needs to say where they're from or where they live, because that gives the world the knowledge that, this is happening in Kershaw County, but these folks are actually from Charleston, or these folks are actually from Greenville. So they're just agitators They don't really have a vested interest in the community. And I think that's really, really helpful, and it's easy to do. The other thing is the presentation itself by the company or the presentation on the project by the economic developer doesn't have to fit into that time window. So that's important because if it's controversial, people will get upset. Well, the presentation took 30 minutes. Why are we being limited in our time? Because again, it's important to lay those ground rules early in the process. If this is not what you're doing, you need to be doing this. And you need to be pushing this if your politicians are pushing back, because it's really important. The other thing that I have seen communities do is, again, we don't want this to be controversial. We want to keep it under the radar. We'll have this meeting in our normal meeting space that only holds 20 people or 30 people, even though we know lots more people are going to be interested in coming. So what that results in is 20 or 30 angry people and about 50 or 60 really, really angry people sitting outside or waiting in line to get in to be heard. So if you know, oh, go ahead, you want to say something? Yeah, so if you know that it's going to be controversial and there are going to be a lot of people there, you move it somewhere else, because otherwise it's saying, we don't want your input. We don't want you to be heard. We don't want you to have a voice. Move it to a school, move it to a church, move it to somewhere else where you'll know that it will definitely, at the very least, give the impression that the community, the politicians are interested in hearing what the community has to say and wants to give them a voice. Yes, James?
First, cameraman, I apologize. I forgot to tell Ford that he's supposed to stay on the stage. I know you're working your tail off back there trying to track him all over this place. Well, you're good now. He's already up.
Okay.
Can I get one of our microphones real quick?
Do you want me to
No,
throw it?
not that one. Yeah, you toss that to me.
Oh, so sorry.
So this is on, all right.
Oh, that's cute.
Caroline Warner's idea, so we don't have to run with a mic to you, you just throw it to somebody. So Brantley and Donna are living this real time in Colleton County, so I wanted them to share kind of what they've learned from that process.
Okay, so specifically on town hall meetings, I think I'm having like some PTSD watching some of this stuff right now.
Sorry, man.
We had you may have read about it in the Post and Courier along with like all my emails from last week. But we had a town hall. We had it at the same venue. This is just a fun fact here about Colleton County. The same venue where Forrest Gump's mom talked to the principal about getting into school. It was shot there. But the old Hampton Street Auditorium, we had a turnaway crowd of 450 people. Donna and I and a couple folks from our co-op sat backstage the whole night and kind of watched it unfold. We've been in Colleton County most of our lives, and we found that we recognized about 10% of the folks that were in the crowd. And this meeting was, it was going to be a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We changed it to a public info session. It was done town hall style. In retrospect, a mistake. Lesson learned on that. But it was put together on 3 days' notice. So that just goes to show you, what can mobilize that quickly. And yes, these folks coming up, they would say, oh, well, I'm from Mount Pleasant, or I'm from Beaufort, or there was very little of, well, I live on Cooks Hill Road, or I live in Green Pond, or something like that. But I mean, these forces that are working against us are powerful, and we've just got to be really cognizant of that.
Thank you.
This is real time.
Yeah. We do no question, or we?
No, go ahead.
Okay, all right. So I'm almost done, by the way. I'm almost done. I know Tushar's excited about that. Yeah. Sorry. Let's go backwards. So, just some takeaways. Have a NIMBY strategy, because if you haven't faced it yet, you will. You will. And that goes back to what I said. Make sure you got the pieces in place. Make sure you know who the players are. Make sure you've identified groups that need to be talked to. Make sure you've identified those guardians, the other players in the community that probably would be beneficial to let them know what's going on. But make sure you're obviously coordinating with the company as well. A, they're spending a lot of money. B, they're worried about their name being in the paper. So this is a coordinated effort. I want to say that again. And again, tie your economic development plan into your NIMBYism plan, right? So you can say, well, this is what we've been talking about. This is what we've been saying in the public for forever. This is what we talk about at the Rotary meetings. This is what we talk about on our website. We're going after these types of companies. Again, showing the community that you're being transparent early on in the process. Don't assume that people understand economic development. They do not. The average person has no idea what we do, right? None whatsoever. So it's important to be out in your community talking with them, even when there's not a controversial project. And I know a lot of you do that. I know that. I got that. But you got to make an effort to ensure that. The other thing is, utilities, y'all aren't off the hook either, because this is a different way of looking at econ dev, right? Economic developers need your help, because you are sometimes the only voice that folks say, all right, he probably's not lying to us, or she's probably not lying to us. You're our power provider, right? And so if you say, we think this is a good project, it'd be good for us, it's not going to be on the backs of ratepayers, like, that's very, very powerful. It's very, very powerful. And the company and the economic developers and the politicians need all of the allies they can possibly get. Now, if you don't like the project or think it's terrible, you probably need to let your economic developer know that this is not a good project, we don't like it either. 'Cause otherwise, it won't go well in a public session.
One of the challenges that we're having right now on that point is that, and I'm not sure if this is the case with Eagle Rock in your backyard, but these developers are going out and identifying a piece of property that they think works before they've ever had a conversation with the utility, with our co-op. That's the first thing that needs to happen. Before they go to zoning, before they go do anything, we got to be able to make sure we can actually serve the thing. And that's why we see it. I'm sure you're seeing it all over the Southeast, but these big power users, their very first conversation needs to be with a co-op or whoever their power provider is.
Yeah.
We don't say those names in here.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to. Those who shall not be named. This goes back to what I mentioned, visible in your community, telling the stories of existing industry. It's just being out in the public. These are a lot of new things. This is very time consuming. This is stuff that you all are not used to doing. You probably don't have the staff to necessarily do them or the money. Again, the companies can help you with this, and they should be helping you. They should be hiring pollsters. They should be hiring public relations specialists. A lot of us have firms that do that type of work. And they can be the person power, the manpower to help you get some of these things accomplished. This is not what we're used to. I get it. But that is the new reality that we're living in. And if it smells that it's going to be controversial, it's definitely going to be controversial. I think that's it. So what I'd like to do is answer any questions you all have. Don't want to go down necessarily a data center rabbit hole or a renewable energy rabbit hole, but sort of generic questions on NIMBYism, what we talked about today. Yes, sir. Do you want the...
Go ahead, Robert.
Is it possible to limit the...
No, you have to hold this.
Oh, sorry.
You're required to hold this.
Sorry. Is it possible to limit the public comments to residents, or at least prioritize local residents?
Absolutely. It depends on what your community wants to do, what your politicians are willing to do. I think it's absolutely possible to do that because really everybody else doesn't have a vested interest. They're not the neighbors. They're not the ones that will live with this project, that will benefit from it or perceptually not benefit from it. And so it's absolutely possible to do, as long as that's being explained at the outset of the meeting. What I have seen when that's tried to be done and it got out of hand, again, because of how the meeting was being run, people would then defer their time. I'm a resident, I live a block away from this, but I want to defer my time to this person from New York who wants to talk about it. You can't allow that either. So those ground rules have to be set up front. Go ahead.
Before we do, Mary Lisa, I know you got a question or a comment, but I asked Richard Blackwell if he would come up and say a few words. He was presenting to the YP's, SCEDA's YP group 2-3 weeks ago, and had some really good things to say about this whole NIMBY movement and what we need to be doing as pros. So you can come up, stay there, whatever you want to do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. You're exactly right, Ford. The NIMBYism is a huge issue, and it's growing, much beyond just infrastructure and lack of sites. But as James shared, about 3 weeks ago, we spoke to the SCEDA YPs about this same discussion. And what we talked about, or what I talked about, is some of the things that I see Daja in the audience and Caroline that we were doing in Oconee County with leading with facts. You heard James mention that. I think that's a big thing, is through your discussions, leading with facts. The second thing is being positive. Don't get in the mudslinging. Don't get in the he said, she said type stuff. Always stay above board with your discussions. The third thing, and I know Brantley did not mention it, but he rolled out a webinar series and being on YouTube. Education. Don't wait for this issue to happen in your community. Get ahead of it. Start with the education campaign that Ford touched on, whether it's really needs to be everything. It needs to be getting it in front of your rotaries, going on the radio, writing that op-ed. I don't want to say plagiarism, but Chat GPT. I mean, you give it a few ideas, you can copy and paste to write that op-ed or to put that social media post out there. But education, getting ahead, because there's so much misinformation out there that you don't want to play catch up. You want to get ahead of it. And that's, again, leading with facts. The other thing to add to your idea that, again, Caroline, Daja, give credit to them. We had an ambassador campaign in Oconee County. So when there was an issue, it's almost like a bat signal. It was a software. You could basically alert your ambassadors, and then they can start amplifying the right message and the positive message. And I think that's maybe something, Caroline, you can look into for the power team, because it was so easy. I mean, you hit send, everybody in this room would get an alert, and you go to whatever your social media is to help amplify the message, whether it's like, comment, share. I think that's maybe something to think about as well.
One thing, just a caution for the op-ed folks, economic developers, keep a volunteer between yourself and trouble. So one, make sure your board knows you're doing it.
Oh, yeah.
And if possible, get your chairman or chairwoman to be the face of that editorial rather than you as a local economic developer. Mary Lisa, you had something to... Oh, yeah. You throw her a mic?
She needs a box. Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Those are good photo ops, I guess.
I'm just curious if you change your strategy, if the state, the county, and the locals and the company have already foregone incentives. You've decided that no one's going to support this from an incentive standpoint. The project has to happen anyways. You're getting community pushback. Do you change your strategy in how you spread the word of this project?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that incentives is just a piece of the puzzle. And I'll be frank, I don't see where all of these arguments are hinging on incentives. It's just hinging on, I don't want it there. I don't want it near me. I don't understand it. I don't like it. Incentives is just one other piece that they can give you a hard time about, but I don't think it's a deal killer at all. You want to say something, Tusha?
Yeah, and I would just say, because I represent primarily companies, but the people that want to kill deals they're audibly talking, because I've heard them, about how can we kill this deal? Mm-hmm. All right, incentives are off the table. We get that. We're going to show up at Planning Commission. We're going to show, for any kind of land use or zoning change, they have gotten incredibly sophisticated in determining how they can screw a deal up for a community. And it's become really problematic. A couple of times, you almost have to, I mean, these people are crazy, but like part of me is like, damn, like that's pretty sophisticated to come up with the strategy. We've got a project where somebody's gone out and registered a bunch of corporate names in the state of South Carolina to try and block a company from using the corporate name. I mean, they are using all kinds of methodologies to try and kill these deals. And then I've got another project where the Oppo group we got through land use and zoning, even got through incentives. They put plants as employees within the company, and then had whistleblowers on things that there was no need to blow a whistle on.
Chemical spills.
Yeah.
Well, that's separate. That's not that one.
All right.
So hold on, I just want to hear, just again, so you hear what Tushar had to say. This is an organized effort. There is money, there is fame, there is lots of interest in seeing your project fail. And that's why we have to change how we're doing it, because otherwise we're not going to be able to combat it. Yes?
We got a few others first.
Yeah, sure.
Jeff McKay, and then we'll go Will Williams.
So,
I'll say Jeff.
James and Ford, we're in the midst of one right now. But to me, it seems like the local communities are bearing the brunt of all this. We don't have really a statewide effort, to support the profession and actually define what we want and what we don't want and what we will or won't support. And, is there, and maybe it's utilities, I don't know, but is there a group that can come together and really help us at the local level? Because quite honestly, it's not data centers, it's not just, it's a growth effort in the state. If you listen to the debate that's going on around the state now, you could substitute community, you could substitute manufacturer, you could substitute data center in every one of these debates and issues. But we've got really I don't feel like we've got nothing to lean on to help from a statewide perspective of saying what we do want, what we will support, and how we're going to go about doing it, and talk about the benefits of what we do.
Yeah, I think.
Amen.
I think you're right, and I think the state will definitely have to step up to figure out how to help you all, support you all as you're trying to battle these things on a local level, because you can't do it by yourself. You definitely need those outside voices, like the co-ops, like community leaders, like state leaders, saying this is in line with what we're trying to do as a state. This is important to us, not just here, but across the state. And they need to be a voice at the table as well. And that's not traditionally how they've done it. I remember when I was at Commerce, that was not our role, right? We always thought it was a local role, and we didn't want to give the impression that we're telling the community what to do.
Hold on 1 sec. We got to go back here first. Will Williams. Hold on, Jason, before you throw it.
All right.
Jason Giuliani has a son that was in the All-Star, Little League World Series. The kid is a phenom.
I saw
he
him
looks
play.
like a 25-year-old. But I wanted to see if your arm is halfway as good as his arm. So, Will, if you could back up just a little bit.
Here we go. Ready?
Nice.
I'm going to call that a ball high and outside, but you got it over there. Thank you. Will.
So to kind of tag on to what Jeff was just saying, right now it appears to be data centers that the legislature and everybody's after, but it's coming from manufacturing.
Absolutely.
Because your manufacturer, in my community, we've got 3 data centers under construction. One of them's a hyperscaler, and 2 of them are less than several of our manufacturers. So we can sit around and say, oh, this isn't going to happen to us, or we can come together as a group and come up with some strategies, because everybody remembers what Mike Tyson said, right? Everybody got a plan until they get smacked in the mouth. So our plan has always been kind of like what Ford's talking about, fly under the radar and we'll just get this through. Well, we've been smacked in the mouth. I got to go over and experience what was going on in Marion County. Whew, that was fun.
Yeah.
Little old Saluda County last week, it was so interesting to watch these folks come out against a solar farm. I know everybody's not fond of solar farms, but in small counties like Saluda County, it's mailbox money, and they need mailbox money very badly. So we can't just sit here and just go, oh, well, we feel bad for Brantley and Donna, or we feel bad for Zach. We've got to come together, because it's coming to your backyard sooner rather than later.
Yep.
Hold on. What's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing continuously over and over and expecting the same or different results.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you share a fun fact about the Meta project, right? This big giant's coming to the community, but what does it do for small business?
So we've Meta's $800 million investment, 100 jobs, which a reporter for the Newsless Courier told me that was not a lot of jobs. I didn't argue with them, but so there's 1,500 construction jobs. They've built an on-site chow hall to feed the workers so they don't have to go out. There is a caterer that has done great business in our community that now has won the lottery because for the past year and a half, they've been feeding 1,500 people every day.
Amen.
So it does, and then also there's that whole ecosystem thing we talk about in economic development. So Rolls-Royce is in our community because of all the data center development across the country. They are having to up their business for the backup generation capacity. So, and then AGY makes glass yarn and it's used in all the chips and everything. They've expanded recently because of the growth in data centers. So there really is a spinoff to all this. And, you know, as I tell folks complaining about data centers on Meta, I'm like, that's kind of ironic that you're complaining about a data center with a product that uses a data center.
The irony. Annie, did you want to say something?
Annie had a question or a comment.
Hold on, let's get the mic. Can you throw it to Matt? Matt, you throw it to her. While he's doing that and talking about reporters.
Oh, almost.
My practice with reporters, since newspapers have gotten weaker over time and reporting has gotten weaker over time, I ask the reporter if they will email me their questions and I will type a response that they can quote. And then if they have further questions, we could do a phone call and follow up. But to ensure that they are capturing your message correctly, have them email you the questions in advance. Annie.
So kind of related to what Will was talking about and Richard is your opinion, what do you think SCEDA's role is? They're the voice of economic development for the state and kind of removed from State Department of Commerce. So as a concerted effort to educate the public, shouldn't we be using SCEDA more to talk about the benefits to economic development?
Yeah, and maybe it's SCEDA that's doing some of those public relations outreach things. Maybe it's SCEDA that's putting ads up on Instagram or social media, not necessarily talking about a specific project, but talking about how important manufacturing is, how important life sciences is to South Carolina. Or maybe they share in those costs with the state, and the state does a campaign, again, raising awareness about how important economic development is and how important it is for the trajectory of South Carolina. It's got to be a concerted effort. I mean, private companies aren't going to do that. We as economic developers as an association and or at the state level need to be doing it as well.
Barry Jers.
Barry Jers.
Gentlemen, first, thank you for getting deep into this subject. This was a good one. Ford, you mentioned there's a lot of money engaged in trying to defeat the projects. And look, there are two things we've been taught. Number one, know your enemy, and the other is follow the money. So I'd like to know what your thoughts are on where's that money coming from and where's it going?
Oof. That's a great question. I think it in part depends on the type of project. So you'll find where certain industries are battling data centers because it's bad for them, or it hurts their industry. Same with renewable energy. I mean, there's a lot of money from more traditional fossil fuels that are going into organizations that are trying to fight renewable energy projects. There's a great story actually in that book that I referenced where, this is in Florida, where an attorney has been hired to help kill projects, solar projects in Florida, and he gets a bonus, I can't remember what the amount is, every time a project is killed. And so he has gone after filing in state court to be able to try to kill all of his projects because he is absolutely paid for it. That is his thing. He's like a mercenary out there trying to kill them. So it really depends on the type of the project, but that money exists. But the last thing I want to mention is it's not cheap. I mean, it's not expensive to put your opinion up on Facebook. It's not expensive to write a BS article or a BS commentary that's full of incorrect facts. So you've got people with vested interests trying to kill projects and also crusaders out there trying to kill projects with very, very cheap means. And as a result, it's a cacophony of naysayers that we've got to have a concerted effort to stop.
Matt, you got the last question.
Yeah, Ford, thanks for
Yeah.
bringing, this is fascinating stuff, and I'm just curious, is there a example of a successful company or community that's had a NIMBY plan? Do you have any examples of somebody that's done it right?
Yeah, we've been very successful doing this with data center projects and renewable energy projects across the country when we realized that what we were doing wasn't working. And it was creating so much stress on the local community, so much stress on local politicians that we had to shift. So plenty of examples in Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Texas as well. But that meant dollars, right? And for a data center company, the dollars, just to be frank, they aren't as important in terms of shelling out cash. So it was a campaign of probably $250,000 to $300,000, a coordinated campaign where you had all of those different elements that we're talking about now out there. But the project went forward. It's just a new world. And I was pinging Will, who left, but about insanity. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We cannot continue to do the same cloak and dagger approach to economic development. We cannot. We have to have a coordinated effort to move forward to make sure the public is informed about what we're trying to accomplish.
One of the best ways to avoid all of this is know what your community wants. John O'Toole, you're one of the best at saying, this is what our community wants. And up front, telling project managers or site selectors, this is not our wheelhouse. I don't want to waste your time to go down that road. So having a strategy, a community-owned strategy for what you want in your backyard, critically important. Thank you. This conversation started, Ford and I were, Germany?
Yeah.
In
Germany, yeah.
We're having lunch, and it was just something that was heavy on his mind, and we talked probably for an hour and a half about it, about how important this issue is becoming. So that's why we did this today. So thank you.
Yes, sir.